On the 14th of August, 2005, a Greek fighter pilot flew up alongside a passenger jet over the Aegean Sea and looked in through its windows. What he saw is the reason we are telling this story 20 years later. The aircraft was flying perfectly. Wings level. Engines running. Autopilot holding its course. And nobody was flying it. Everything that happened in the air had already been decided on the ground, the night before, by a job that went exactly as planned. Helios Airways was a small Cypriot charter airline. On the evening of the 13th of August, its Boeing 737 was parked at Larnaca with a minor complaint in the logbook: a door seal had been letting air whistle out. Engineers ran a pressurization leak check overnight. To do that check, they had to take the aircraft's pressurization system off automatic and drive it by hand. That system has a small selector switch on the overhead panel with 3 positions: automatic, standby, and manual. On automatic, the aircraft manages its own cabin pressure with no thought from anyone. On manual, it does nothing at all unless a human tells it to. The check was completed successfully. The leak was fixed. And the switch was left where the engineer had put it. In manual. It should not have mattered. On any normal morning, that switch gets looked at 3 separate times before an aircraft leaves the ground. At 6 in the morning, the crew arrived. The captain was a 59-year-old German pilot with thousands of hours. The first officer was Cypriot, in his 50s. Flight 522, Larnaca to Prague, with a stop in Athens. 115 passengers boarded, plus 6 crew. Families going on holiday. Students. Children. It was a completely ordinary summer morning. 3 times before takeoff, a checklist required someone to look at that overhead panel and confirm the pressurization was set to automatic. The pre-flight check. The before-start check. The after-takeoff check. 3 times, someone read the item aloud. 3 times, someone answered that it was set. And 3 times, nobody actually looked. This is not laziness so much as habit. The switch is almost always on automatic, because it is almost never touched. You see what you expect to see. At 9:07, Flight 522 lifted off from Larnaca into a clear Mediterranean morning, and began to climb. And because the pressurization was in manual, the cabin did not seal. As the aircraft went up, the air inside it simply thinned out with the air outside. Passing 12,000 feet, a horn went off in the cockpit. It was the cabin altitude warning, the aircraft telling the pilots, in the only voice it has, that the air inside was no longer safe to breathe. And here we arrive at the design flaw that killed 121 people. On that model of Boeing, the cabin altitude warning used exactly the same horn as the takeoff configuration warning, the alarm that tells you the aircraft is not correctly set up to leave the ground. Same sound. Same tone. 2 completely different emergencies. One of them can only happen on the ground, and one of them can only kill you in the air. The captain heard a takeoff configuration warning going off in cruise, where it made no sense at all. He decided the aircraft had a fault. He called his company on the radio and asked about circuit breakers for the cooling fans. The ground engineer asked him a question back: where are the pressurization controls set? The captain did not answer. Because by then, he was no longer able to. At around 18,000 feet, the cabin altitude triggered the passenger oxygen masks. They dropped from the ceiling across the whole aircraft, swinging on their tubes. Those masks are not a life support system. They hold roughly 12 minutes of oxygen, just enough for a crew to dive the aircraft down to breathable air. They are a bridge to a descent. If the descent never comes, they are only a delay. The crew's own masks were different, and better, but a pilot has to reach up, pull one down and put it on. And that is precisely what hypoxia takes away from you. Oxygen starvation at altitude does not feel like drowning. There is no panic, no choking, no sense of suffocation. It feels like mild drunkenness. Fingers get warm and clumsy. Judgment goes first, and it goes silently, while you remain convinced you are thinking clearly. Pilots who train for this in a chamber are asked to do simple arithmetic as the air is taken away. They write nonsense on the page, smiling, certain they are doing it right. The recording from Flight 522 shows a captain calmly asking the wrong question about cooling fans while the answer sat on the panel above his head. This is why the condition is so feared. Every other emergency in aviation announces itself. An engine fire is loud. A stall shakes the aircraft. Hypoxia does the opposite. It removes the very faculty you would need to notice it, and it does so gently, in the order that is worst for you. First judgment. Then vision narrows. Then the hands stop working. Awareness that anything is wrong at all is usually the last thing to arrive, and by then it is too late to act on it. The crew had perhaps 30 seconds of useful thought after the cabin passed the point of no return. 30 seconds to notice, diagnose, reach up and pull down a mask that was sitting an arm's length away. What they did instead was troubleshoot a ventilation fault, patiently and politely, on the radio. Somewhere over the Aegean, both pilots stopped moving. Behind them, in the cabin, 115 passengers breathed through masks that were already running out. And then the aircraft simply carried on. The autopilot flew the programmed route to Athens exactly as instructed. It arrived over the airport, and when nobody told it to descend, it entered a holding pattern and began flying circles in the sky. Athens Control called Flight 522 again and again. Nothing came back. The aircraft did not deviate. It did not descend. It just kept turning. For over an hour it held that pattern, at 34,000 feet, in a country's busiest airspace, with everyone aboard already beyond saving. Greece scrambled 2 F-16s. This was 4 years after September 11th, an airliner not answering its radio was treated as the worst possible thing it could be. The fighters climbed and closed in. What the lead pilot reported is the image the world remembers. The captain's seat was empty. The first officer was slumped forward over the controls, motionless. Behind, in the cabin, oxygen masks were hanging and passengers were not moving. The jet flew on, immaculate and untroubled, around and around. Think about what that pilot was actually looking at. A modern airliner, undamaged, in perfect trim, holding its altitude to within a few feet. Every light working. Every system healthy. And 121 people inside it who could not be reached by anything he was able to do. There is no procedure for that. Fighters can escort an aircraft, or they can shoot it down. They cannot open it. He flew alongside it for the better part of an hour, watching a machine perform its job flawlessly with nobody left to fly it. And then something happened that nobody expected. The fighter pilot watched a man walk into the cockpit and sit down in the captain's empty seat. He was wearing a portable oxygen mask. He waved. His name was Andreas Prodromou. He was 25 years old, a flight attendant on that aircraft, and he held a commercial pilot's license. He had been breathing from the portable oxygen bottles carried in the cabin for emergencies, moving through a plane where everyone else had already stopped. We do not know how long he had been conscious, or what he understood about where he was. We know he reached the cockpit, sat in the seat, and put his hands on the controls of an aircraft he had never flown. He had almost no time. Flight 522 had been airborne for nearly 3 hours on a flight planned for less than 2, and the fuel was almost gone. The left engine flamed out first. The aircraft began to descend. Prodromou made a distress call that never reached anyone. The radio was still tuned to a frequency far behind them, back in Cyprus. The second engine failed. At 4 minutes past 12, Flight 522 came down in the hills near Gramatiko, north of Athens. Everyone aboard was killed. The investigation took 2 years, and its conclusion was uncomfortably simple. The aircraft was airworthy. The engines never failed until the fuel ran out. There was no bomb, no hijack, no structural failure, no weather. One switch had been left in the wrong position, 3 checks had been performed without being performed, and 1 warning horn had been designed to mean 2 different things. Boeing changed the warning. Cabin altitude alerts on those aircraft now have their own distinct alarm and their own light, so that no crew can ever again mistake a slow suffocation for a paperwork problem. Airlines rewrote how checklists are read, so that a challenge and a response require a hand and an eye on the actual switch, not a memory of what it usually looks like. 121 people died because a system that was supposed to catch a single human error had 3 chances to catch it and missed all 3. The only person on that aircraft who understood what was happening was a 25-year-old cabin crew member with a borrowed oxygen bottle, and he reached the controls with minutes of fuel left. That is the story of Helios Airways Flight 522. If you want the story of another flight that flew itself while its crew could do nothing, watch the one on screen now.